If you look at a coin, the limits of perception and our experience and what we think is real and true is when we come into terms with death. Because death is something that we can't conceive of. We only witness somebody who has died, but we don't know where they go. We don't know what happens. That's why so many pagan religions and so many religions in general start to question reality and go into the fundamental truth of our existence the moment we start to perceive of death. Even the story of the Buddha and his awakening is that he didn't start to wonder beyond his life, right? His life of luxury and pampering and everything. He's living like a king who had everything he absolutely ever needed or wanted. You know, a prince who had everything, and his father wanted him to stay that way. His father didn't want him to take, you know, the path of the aesthetics. So he was like trying to make sure that he didn't see any sickness or suffering or death, old age, nothing like that. He controlled his environment as much as possible so he couldn't perceive of anything differently, so that he would start to question. And by some means or another, he ended up coming across this older woman or this older person. And he was like, whoa, what's that? And then he came across somebody who was ill, and he came across somebody who was dead. And he started saying, what is this? What is this part of life? What is happening right now? And it was such a shock to his being that that was enough that he went straight to the aesthetic route instead. So in death, we start to wonder what else is there that we don't perceive, that we don't see, that we don't understand. And that's where mythology and story comes from, because the mind always wants to create a meaning or a purpose or a definition behind it. So we mythologize, we talk about things in stories and anecdotes and tales, tall tales. And it makes you wonder that if us being alive, so to speak, are so unaware of what's there after death, of death, and the life that exists beyond what we perceive to be living, then what do the dead experience? What of the nature of spirit? What of the nature beyond the physical? What of the nature of this other side of reality? It's that flipping of the coin, right? We see everything from this side of the coin, and the moment you flip it, you lose this perception, and now you're living in this perception. The other one doesn't exist anymore. So as we're living in this wakefulness, we are not aware, we can't perceive of death and what that experience is like. And simultaneously, those who have moved on, unless they are a highly evolved being, you know, with heightened awareness, a higher consciousness, then they also feel the same. They only perceive of this reality and they are no longer aware. Now, the same concept applies when we're alive. In this world, in this life, where all these other states of mind that we go through when we experience all these perceptual fields that we enter into, it's that coin flip, where in this moment, this is all we can conceive of. And the ego mind is so sure of it that even sensitive souls are persuaded that what they feel and perceive is 100% true. And that's where we need to call everything into question. Because as Vedanta says, whatever you're perceiving, can it ever be true? Can it ever be real? If you're perceiving it. How much of that sphere are we missing because of our perception? In a deep state of samadhi, if we want to have a true measurement, a true way to assess our lives and other people, we can never do that from a place of our own perception, from our own experience even. You should never assess or gauge another person through your experience. But that's often what we do, and that's fine so long as we have a perception to deal with. You have to work with it somehow. But we have to also take our own ideas, our own convictions, our own beliefs, our own values, our own heart to hearts with a sense of unsurety, no matter how persuaded we feel by it. There's a reason I say I love it when people get confused. I love it when the high spiritual seeker who has become well articulated and well indoctrinated into many spiritual traditions, who have learned so many stories, who have learned so many concepts, get confused suddenly. And they don't know what to think anymore. Because from my understanding, you are one step closer to truth than in that moment where we were so well read and so well educated, even though you felt sure. Because the moment we are enforcing our values, our beliefs, our morality, something else on life, what are we doing? We're clinging to a very specific perceptual field. We are clinging and holding on with dear life. And like the story of the Buddha, it isn't until you surrender, right? He tried all these different paths, all these different avenues. He learned everything you could possibly learn. He tried everything. He tried every ritual, every practice. He meditated, he did yoga, he did everything. And it wasn't until he finally just surrendered himself that he became enlightened.